wait a minute. All right, so Fast API is one of the top, one of the new, this one. Yes, Fast API is one of the new web frameworks in Python, and just like the name implies, it's usually used to create REST APIs in Python. And throughout the rest of the course from now on, we'll be looking at the framework. We'll look at the framework, like first get the theoretical aspect of it. And when we are done, we'll look at actually building these endpoints using this Fast API framework. So today's class will be all about an introduction. All about an introduction to the framework. So we'll read a little more about it, check out the Github Repository and all of that. Then at the end of the class, we are going to build something that it will be a minimalistic version of an API, just something simple, so that you get the feel of it. Then from next classes, we'll then go into the different areas of Fast API and study them more closely. All right, so at this point, I will share my screen. Okay, please give me a minute. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Okay, that's nice. All right, so I want to share my browser now. Okay, can you see my browser? What do you see? Do you see the code editor or the browser?
See the browser.
Browser.
See the Fast API.
Okay, that's good. So, so this is the website of Fast API, and it is accessible at fastapi.tiangolo.com. That's FASTAPY for Fast API .TIANGOLO for Django and .com. So this page explains basically what this Fast API is about, the core features, the core advantages that it has over other web frameworks that we know. For example, in Python, we know that we have other frameworks like Tornado, and there's also Django. So why is Fast API different? That's what this page really tries to break. And one of the foremost things about Fast API is that it's highly performant. Like it's really performant, and on par with the performance we get with Node.js and Go. So maybe after this class, you can you can go to this and click on this link, all right, to get more details about the the performance details of the framework. Then it also has other advantages that like it's fast to code and you experience fewer bugs. And this is basically due to the typing, like pedantic typing that is that is heavily used within the framework. So when I say pedantic typing, you will see a whole lot of depth in the upcoming lectures. So that is that for the basic introduction. So during your free time, you can just go over this website and read the rest of it up. So it's really used in the industry, and a couple of companies are already using it in production. We we have companies like Crypt AI, Dropbase, they're just many test-driven.io, etc., etc. So that's just it. When you are free, maybe after the class, you can try your best to go through the website. So for now, let us look at the GitHub repository. I believe you can still see my screen, right?
Yes, you can.
Okay, okay. All right. So this is the first step in GitHub repository. You may be wondering why I'm bringing this up. Most of the times when you are thinking about the technology to use for your project, it's always ideal to go through their it's always ideal to go through their GitHub repository and then get an idea of how active the development is, like who and who are contributing to this project, right? How active is the development? Because nobody wants a situation in which maybe I start using a particular library or a particular technology in my project, then within a few maybe within a few months the development is discontinued, right? It's something that brings a whole lot of security risks to your application. So if you scroll down, you see the number of contributors. These are the total number of people that have actually been involved in the development of this framework. And you can also check out the number of commits, right? We have, at the moment, we have 2,000 commits on the master branch. Then another thing that I always check is when was the last commit made, right? When was the last commit? When did we have the last commit in the master branch? And in this case, it's 6 days ago. That means this step is, the development is very active. It's quite safe to use. Then as for pull requests, we have a total of 479 open pull requests and 1,115 closed pull requests. So all this go on to show us that this is really something that is currently being developed. Right, the development speed is still there. It's something that should be. It's a project that should be up for a couple of years from now. All right, so that is it. I think I'll pause here for questions. Like, do you have any question? Do you have any suggestion? Is there anything you don't understand at this point before we start the actual coding?
Yeah, like I have, let me just ask before we go further about the,
Okay.
said something about selecting, checking things or the particular project.
I'm struggling to hear you. I'm struggling to hear you. Can you drop a message on the chat, please?
Okay. Okay.
Hi, Mike. Yeah, drop in the chat. Okay, so while we are waiting for Mike to drop his question on the chat, do you have any questions so far?
No question.
Okay, Matthew? All right, Uche, any question?
Okay, not really. If I understand correctly, this fast API now is a backend framework, just like Django. It's a backend framework, and we can use it to build the back end of sites. So, for example, if I want to build a site, apart from the front end, the HTML, CSS, so this one serves as the back end, right?
Yes, it is a backend framework that's used to build REST APIs. You use it to build the back end of not just sites, mobile apps, applications, and the rest of that.
Okay.
Okay. So I think we'll proceed. So whenever Mike's question drops, I will pause there and attend to it. So before we do that, I would love to point out a different section of this website for you, and it will really help you. If you can see my mouse properly, if you go by your left to your left, you see tutorial, right? User guide. We have a user guide for this particular technology, and this user guide is pretty much detailed. Like it's very detailed. All right, so I may not be able to teach you everything. What you need to do is, at the end of each class, you can go to the specific section of the user guide that dealt on the topic that we taught in the class that day, and you go through it. All right, then, and if you have any questions, that you can always get in touch with me on Slack, and I'll always be happy to attend to your questions. So we have, in these tutorials, we have the beginner side, like the normal tutorials. Then after the beginner side, we have the advanced side, which teaches you everything, like which goes into much deeper details of some of the things you'll be learning at the beginner section. Things like advanced dependencies, working with cookies, headers, middlewares, databases, etc. Okay, so now let us get to the actual code. Okay, which of my screen can you see now? I believe it's my code, right? The VS Code.
Yes, I can see the VS Code.
Okay. Okay, Mike just dropped his question on the chat, and he's asking about selecting the technology to use for a project, right? So does it mean that when a technology is no longer maintained after a couple of years, one has to rewrite a code base in a new technology? Yes, unfortunately, yes. Unfortunately, yes, that's the reality of it all. So you need to make sure that you are selecting a technology that has the potentials to be around for as long as possible, right? For as long as possible. It wouldn't really be nice to maybe you build a software using a particular technology, then at some point the core libraries, the core tech that used to build this is no longer maintained, right? Bugs are discovered, security vulnerabilities are discovered like very often. So if you are making use of something that is not actively maintained, there could be a bug there. There could be a security vulnerability there that may at some point creep into your application, and cause issues later on. So it's always ideal to select a project that is actively maintained. Right, you go to the GitHub, you go through the number of persons that have actually contributed to this project. Right, so let's say if I have if there's a library that I need to use for my project and maybe there's only one contributor, it's just too risky. All right, this single contributor can decide to, maybe for whatever reason, stop contributing to the project and you will just be left in the loop. So it's always ideal to take note of the how active the development is, the number of persons contributing, the number of pull requests, pending pull requests, completed pull requests, and all of that. So if your technology is no longer maintained, unfortunately, you may need to rewrite the code base. Right? You may need to rewrite the code base. All right, thank you. So that is all. So Mike, I hope you really understand what I'm saying. Or do you have any other question?
Yeah, it's clear now. Thank you.
All right. Okay, so in today's class, we are going to look at the basics of like this fast API, right? How does it really work? We'll set up a very simple endpoint that will help us to just get the basic feel of it. All right. Look at how parts work and all of that. Today is just basics, all right? Today's just basics. Then it's from next class that that's from tomorrow, that will go deeper into the different sections, into the different parts of the framework. So to do that, I'll create a new folder for class 5, today's class 5. Then we are going to work from there. Then I'm going to create one file, touch base file. Okay. So with that, we have the base file that we'll be working with. So what I need to do now is that, before we can actually work with this fast API, we need to actually install the library from pip. Okay. So if you go to right, this minute. All right, so we can search for fast API and pip. So I believe you all know what pip is in the context of Python. So pip is like the package manager for Python. All right, so if you have a library that you wish to share to the world, like you can build a library and put it up on pip, and anyone who needs this particular library on this project can install the library and use it from there. So we are going to install this fast API, and we are going to start working with it from there. So to do that, the first thing I need to do is to create a virtual environment. Like what a virtual environment is an environment where all the files that I'm downloading from Git, from pip, I don't want these files to be stored on my main Python environment. I want them to be encapsulated. I want them to be separated from the main Python environment. So I can then create this environment, and activate this environment, then finally install the packages that I'll be using, the libraries I will be using into this environment. So there are different ways of creating virtual environments. Alright, depends on your operating system. For Windows, I don't really know, but you need to search that online, how to create a virtual environment on Windows. You can look for that online, but I'm using Linux. So to create a virtual environment for Linux, you simply type Python 3 -m -env. All right. So the virtual environment has been created. You can see this VENV folder just above my base file. Is there any question on that, or do you need any further explanation on that?
Okay, you wrote VENV twice. I know one of them is like the name of the virtual environment you are giving. Which of them? Is it the first VENV that represents the name of the folder you are creating, or the second one?
Okay, that's a perfect question. That's a perfect question. I'll attend to that now. So Ihana, do you have any question on that? Okay, Mike, how about you?
Yes. Hello?
No, it's fine. It's fine.
Right.
Comfortable with creating a virtual environment.
Okay, that's good. That's good. So Mike.
Hello? Sorry.
Okay, please drop your question on the chat, please, Mike. Or is it Ihaman? Please drop your question on the chat, please. Okay, that's perfect. All right, so let me explain the question from. Let me attend to the question from I think Ihaman. So we have earlier I spoke about creating a virtual environment because I don't want to install whatever library I'll be using, whatever package I'll be using within my main Python environment. So I can choose to create an environment and install whatever I want to install into that specific environment. This ensures there's what they call a separation of concerns, right? Whereby all the libraries that I'm using is only within that environment and not in another environment. Okay, so attending to Ihame's question, he was asking the command here is Python 3 -m VENV. Like, which VENV is this file? Right, so I'm going to answer that question with an example. Okay, so I'm going to create a different virtual environment, but instead of calling it VENV, I'll call it ENV. Okay, so what do I have here?
That's ENV.
Yes, ENV. So that goes on to tell us that is this last argument, all right, is this last argument that determines the name of the folder, the name of the environment, right? This first VENV is the package within Python that enables us to create this environment. All right. So basically, what we are saying is we are telling venv, like the package venv, to create a virtual environment that is called env, or that is called any name. Like you can use any name you want to use. All right. So that's just that. I want to name mine venv, so I will delete this env file. Okay, I'll delete the env folder.
Okay, sorry. I'm also noticing, does it mean that if you create one environment, it will replace the previous one you created?
I don't know, serious, I don't know. Would it? I don't, serious, I don't know. There's really no need for it. The other env I had deleted.
So you recreate it.
Yes, I deleted the other one and created another one. Okay, maybe you can try that on your own to check out if it will replace. Yes, but I really don't see need for that. Okay, so after creating a virtual environment, another thing is, as you can see, we have 1,000 plus additions to that's Git. My Git, my version tracking software has picked this whole lot of files. All right, I don't want to push this to GitHub. So I'm going to create a Git Ignore file. Basically, a Git Ignore file is a file that it does Git to ignore certain files or ignore certain folders. So that will touch. Right. So, oh no, I don't want to create it. I want to create it at the base directory, not the class file directory. So I will type the command touch.git. Okay. Then I will add the good. It has now. So with that, you can see that this env file is more grayish, right? It's more grayish. So that's that for it. What this basically means is that when I commit this code to GitHub, right, that env file will not be committed to the GitHub. So only the project files that we are working on will be committed to the GitHub. So when you clone this repository, okay, when you fetch this updated data from GitHub, what you need to do is you have to create your env file again. All right, create your env file again, and from there you start working with it. Okay, so creating an env file basically is not enough. You have to activate that env file. All right, so after activating the env file, whatever package you install from pip will then be installed into that folder. So you do that. I think the command for Windows should be different, but I am not very sure. However, you can search that up online. You can search that up online. But with Linux, you type source. Okay. First, let me go to the class file directory. venv. That's the name of this my virtual environment. Then bin. All right, we have this bin folder, and finally activate. So with that, my environment is activated. And to know that the environment is activated, you will see this. The name of your environment includes in parentheses. Okay, I believe we'll pause there for questions. Any questions so far?
Not really. I'm okay.
Any other question? All right. So now is the time to install the Fast API. And to install a package with pip, to install anything with pip, like we saw here, so like we saw here, I believe you can see my browser, right? Can you see my browser?
Yes, I can see it.
Yes.
Okay. So to install this package with pip, all right, you simply run this command, pip install fast API. When you do this, it will install the fast API into your environment that we just created. But the thing is, we are not going to install just fast API. Fast API depends on other things for it to work. It depends on it makes use of Starlet, it makes use of Pydantic, it makes use of typer, and etc. etc. So we want to install all the dependencies that it has instead of just the fast API alone. Like this installation should install everything. All right. So I'm going to type pip install fast API. Then instead of just installing this fast API, you can optionally open the square brackets, and within it you enter all. What this means is that we are asking pip to install everything, like all the dependencies that come with fast API. So if you click that, it will start installation. So let's wait a minute, it should take some time. Yeah, it's still installing. Let's wait a few moments, like a few more seconds actually.
Okay, while it's installing, just a few questions. Like, I know when I was working on the assignment that was the first assignment I was given for us to be joined with intermediate. One of the websites I was following, they installed some packages. Like, although I didn't follow this exact, I didn't put all when I was installing. We had to it specified some packages like Fast API. There's one SQL Alchemy. I don't really know what the use is, but there are some packages that they installed. So I'm hoping that maybe in this class you explain what some of those packages. I don't know if SQL Alchemy is part of this that is installing, or maybe it is something that is optional based on what they choose. Because I know you have to install a database kind of package too. I don't know.
Yes, that's a perfect question. That's a perfect question. So you can choose to install these packages one by one. All right. but I just choose to install like all the dependencies that comes with FastAPI. Then the SQL alchemy you spoke about is an ORM. ORM is a short form for object relational mapper. All right. So when you're working with SQL databases, like normal databases like Postgres, MySQL, SQLite, all right, SQL databases work with SQL language. Like SQL, it's a programming language that you use to interact with the SQL database. So, like, it's very, it's more cumbersome to maybe build an app, build a backend like this, in which every interaction with the database, you are writing the SQL commands manually. All right, it's difficult, and it will increase the barrier for entry, the entry barrier for new developers. As a result, we have tools that are called ORMs. They are just like the name suggests, object relational mapper. It's a mapper that gives you the interface in which you can interact with your database. All right, you can, let's say if you want to retrieve data from the database or store something into the database, you can do it with Python code, and this mapper will convert that Python code to pure SQL code that it runs on the database. Okay, so SQL alchemy is an example of this ORMs. But in this class, we'll not be using SQL and we'll not be using SQL alchemy. We'll be using Tortoise ORM. It's I prefer Tortoise ORM because it supports async operations by default. All right, so we'll be using that, but it will come at later sections of the class, not now. For now, we are looking at the introduction. We are not really going to go deep for maybe the next 2 or 3 classes, but later on, when we get to the project stage, we'll see how we can use these databases like Redis, PostgreSDB, work with ORMs like the Tortoise ORM, the rest of that.
Okay, so no problem.
Okay.
Yes, I understand.
Okay, please. Does anyone have any other question?
Okay, sorry, one more thing again. On your VS Code, it seems you have a Git, a kind of Git add-on, or is it plugin installed? I don't know what is the name of which add-on did you install that enables you to be able to link with your GitHub and synchronize your files on GitHub?
Okay, I actually did not install any add-on. I think it comes direct with VS Code. You need to, maybe if your VS Code is not up to date, you need to update it and check. I actually don't know. So this does not directly synchronize with my remote GitHub account, all right? But the VS Code comes with a local Git client so that you can, it will be easier for you to maybe make commits, add commits, and all of that. But I really use it because I prefer working with the command line. Let's say if I want to commit anything, I prefer doing it with the command line because it's a whole lot easier for me that way. Like maybe git add or git commit and the rest of that. It's much easier. It's much easier to. So to directly attend to your question, I think it comes by default to VS Code, but I am not sure. You can always check that out.
Okay, I will. It seems probably is a Linux thing because I use Windows and I'm not sure I've seen this, but I'll check it.
Okay.
I use Windows too. I use Windows too, and it comes by default.
Yes, it should come by default.
Okay,
So
I'll
just try and maybe update your VS Code and you should have it. Hopefully.
I think it keeps if you've ever committed before from VS Code, it then just keeps a record of your details.
Okay, I will check that. Thank you.
Okay. So with that, we are going to build a test endpoint. Very, very simple. A very, very simple API using FastAPI. And when I've done that, I'll then go through them line by line and try to explain what each particular line does. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is we need to import the main fast API. Like we need to import the main fast API class, which you use to actually instantiate your application and then add the endpoints. So you do that from fast API import fast API. Let's do this. Okay, please give me a minute. Import fast API command result operation. All right, let's check. Okay, so this is the first thing. You need to import this this fast API class, right, from the fast API library that we installed. So when you are done with that, you then instantiate this class. In the last class, we spoke about object-oriented programming and how to instantiate a class. So that's basically what we are doing here. So you can say app is equal to an instance of this fast. It's actually an instance of this fast API. Is there any question on that?
No question from me. I understand.
Okay. Right. Then we want to create the root endpoint, like the base endpoint. When if it was the front end, it's like the home page. All right, but this is not front end. It's not really home page. It's something like the base endpoint. So to do that, let me first write the function sync the root. This tells us that this is the root, and this function doesn't take any arguments. So let's return a simple hello world. All right, so we are done with that. But for this particular function to be accessible, okay, for this particular function to be accessible, we need to decorate it with this app, this fast API class that we instantiated. So you do that with app. Then, so with that, we've decorated that particular function. All right. Now the next thing is, what kind of requests do you want this particular function to handle? All right. If you remember in the first class, we spoke about the anatomy of HTTP request, and we talked about HTTP verbs like get, like post, like put, and the rest of that. So you need to specify, all right, which kind of HTTP verb do you want to take care of with this particular function? And in this case, we want to work with get requests. Then you need to pass in the path. Don't forget we spoke about paths in our first class. All right. So you need to pass in the path that you want this particular endpoint want to deal with this particular function to deal with. And in this case, I want to route the home, like home request to the home path. I want to route it to here. So I use just a dash for that. With that, we have our very first endpoint. Like when you hear endpoint, APIs, it's as simple as this. So please, any question? I know there should be questions. Like I'm expecting them. We have a message in the chat. Okay,
No
okay.
question by me, no.
All right, Mark, engineer, thank you. He has added the command for activating a DNV on Windows machine. That's perfect, thank you. So, any question, Michelle, Uchi, and Mike?
None from me, sir.
Michelle?
None from me so far.
Okay. That's perfect.
I want to ask if we can only return them. Do you hear me?
Yes, I can hear.
Okay. Let's add the return there. Is there any, like, I believe that's like a dictionary. So can we just also return strings, number, or anything, or just specific that we return in a dictionary or something like that?
Definitely. You can return so many things from pedantic models. We have not gotten to pedantic models yet, but in future classes we are going to look at that. You can return database objects. You can return basically anything, arrays, strings, just anything. I'm returning a simple dictionary here because I'm just trying to the main aim of this class is just to explain the basic concepts, right? I'm trying to show you the basic concept of it all. Okay, so with that, we are going to start this particular server. We are going to start this particular server and access it on our. You can access it with your browser or a test client, like a request clients like Postman or Insomnia or anyone. Okay, to do that, the installation of Fast API that we did, it also came with the server, right? The server that you need to actually run the code, and it is called uvcon. Then we are going to specify the file that we want to run. Right? Here we have the base file, so we are going to type base. Then we need to get this app that we instantiated, right? We need to get reference to this app that we instantiated. So to do that, we have a column. Then let's check. Good. Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can see.
Yeah, we have server, started server process, then waiting for application startup. Then we have that application startup is complete. Then the last info is uvcon running at this particular URL. This is HTTP 127.0.0.1 and at port 8000. So let us open this on our browser and see what's going on. Good. Can you see what we have on the screen?
Yes.
Yes, we can see the returned value, the value that we returned within the code, and we returned hello world, right? So we have hello world on our screen. However, I would love to point out a new way of testing your APIs. It's not every endpoint that you're able to test with your browser. It's not that efficient. Okay? So you need to get a request client, and not a request client. And if you're using Windows, you can try Postman. Can you see this? Postman.com. So if your device is Windows, go to postman.com and download the clients, the API clients. Then if you are using Linux, yeah, I think it's available too, but I prefer Insomnia. Okay. All right, so we have Insomnia.rest. So you can go there and download the API clients. That's if you are using Linux. So I have Insomnia already installed on my machine, so I'm going to open it. Okay. Can you see my test client?
I can see your VS Code interface.
Okay, only the VS Code. Okay.
Yes, only the VS Code.
Make sure. Okay, please, you can now see my test client, right? Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, all right. So this is basically what the test client looks like. You first, like, with this particular test client, you need to specify what the HTTP verbs you want to send your request with. And in this case, since this endpoint interacts with the GET request, all right, I'll be using a GET request. Then we'll then copy this URL. You can then copy this URL to the URL section, and then click send to send your request. Yep. So this is the response we got. A response of 200 basically means that normally means that the request is successful. Then we get the request response, and in this case it is hello world. Okay, let me pause there for questions, please. Any question, please?
What is the app you said for this Insomnia is for Linux? What's the app you called for Windows?
Okay, let's check that out. It is Postman. Go to your browser,
Postman.
then start postman.com.
Okay.
Yeah, then download the app. Though it's a little bit different from the one I'm using. That's Insomnia, but they are basically the same. You specify your HTTP verb, then the endpoints that you want to interact with, and simply send the request. It's as easy as that.
Okay.
Is any other question? Okay. Let me recap again. Let me explain again. The first thing we need to do is to import the fast API class from our fast API library. All right. Then after importing this fast API class, we need to instantiate an object. All right. We need to instantiate that class. Okay. And we learned object-oriented programming in the last class, and in the class we saw how to instantiate the class. So we instantiated this class and we stored it in a variable called app. Okay. So this app is like an object of that class. We then use this app and decorate the function that we want to handle whatever requests we are getting. And the first endpoint we are working with is the root endpoint, and we want to accept a GET request to that particular endpoint. Hence, this GET. Then the what we passed in to the parameter, the first thing is the path. Like, which path do you want to? Which path do you want this function? Which part do you want this function to handle, right? And in this case, it is the best part, is the home part. So hence we used the slash, the forward slash. All right, so that is that. Also, what happens if, for example, this particular endpoint accepts only a GET request? So what will happen if I send a post request to that endpoint? What would happen? Can someone tell us?
Okay, I believe a post request is meant to like create a record or something. That is to
Yeah,
at least based on to create a record or something.
to create a record. And I believe it will need data to, like, it will accept parameter or something like that to create it.
Yes, perfect. So in this case, our endpoint, our specific endpoint is working with a GET request. All right. So if we send a post request, what will happen? Let us see what will happen. Okay, before we get to that, someone made a comment. Ihame, sorry, can you help us copy that code you are writing and put it in the chat if possible? Oops, no, I will not be able to do that because it will not be formatted properly. But at the end of this class, I'm going to push this code to GitHub, and you can then pull from GitHub and interact with the code. Right? I'm sorry about that. I can't put the code there, but you will pull the code later and work with it. So let's change the HTTP verb here to post and see what happens. Good. Can you see this? What is it?
405 error. 405 method error.
Yeah. The 405 error basically means that the method the request verb you are using is not supported for that particular endpoint. That's what the 405 error response means. And we get a response body of data method not allowed. So that's what happens. All right, so let us create a different endpoint that handles let's create a different endpoint that handles a post request. So we'll do the same thing here. Like, we are basically going to repeat whatever we have here. Okay. We'll decorate the app. Then
since we are not seeing your VS Code.
Can you not see?
No, we can't see.
Serious? Okay. Okay, you only see the test clients, right?
You're still seeing the Insomnia
We're still
interface.
seeing the Insomnia interface. Yeah.
Okay, it's okay. I've seen the post. I believe you can now see it, right?
Yes, we can see it now. Yes.
Okay, that's good. So what I want to do now is I want to create a new endpoint that accepts a push request. Okay, it won't really do anything. It will not accept any data. Like I want to do this so that I want to do it so that you can like compare and get an idea of how it works. So as usual, you are going to first create the decorator, and in this case it's get, all right? But since we are going to accept a post request, we will not use get again. We are going to use post. Then as for the path, I want it to be slash, maybe my slash. Yes. So from there we can then create the function that we want to be executed. That the function that we want to execute when request comes to this particular endpoint. And let's call that my sync. Sorry, def my, and still want to return simple dictionary that says hello my. Let this be very work. All right, so that's it. That's it. So I want to try this endpoint now. Will it work?
I guess, yes, I guess it should work since it's just returning.
Oh, that's it. So who else? Henshaw, what do you think?
No, I don't. I don't know if it's work.
Although, like from the understanding I have, well, because I know post. In order to post, you have to post means like creating a record, and creating a record means you have to have a kind of database. You have to,
Yeah.
declare the column headers and the type of data that will be in each column. So I don't really know if this will work.
Okay, let's check. Let us check if it works. So I'm going to go back to my test line. All right. Okay, let's send a push request to the endpoint and see what happens. But I'm of the opinion that it will not work. But why is it so? We have a
So,
404 error, not found. But why?
yeah, because I think when you are posting, you have to like input the data that you want to post. Since post means creating data, so you have to like input the data that you want to post or something. So it's like maybe it takes an argument or something. I don't know.
There's no request
Yeah.
body.
It
Yeah,
needs
There's no
like a
request
yeah.
body.
okay. What you're saying is right. What you're saying is right. The thing is, you can actually send a push request without the payload. Like you can send a push request to your server without actually attaching any data. Right? Though that is not the convention, but you can still do it. Why this thing is not working is because we did not reload our server, right? We have added these new endpoints. We have made changes to the code, but we have not reloaded the server. Hence, the app does not really know that this endpoint exists. Okay, so that is why we are having the error. So if we shut down the server and then start it up again. We should. It should work now. Okay. Let's try. Cool. So as you can see, we now have the hello mic. We now have the hello mic response that we were expecting. Please, any question on that?
Okay, no question. I think I understand. I think when I was even doing my project, I think if I just press Ctrl S on the VS Code, I think it reloads it automatically. I don't know if it's automatic or if it's.
Okay, yeah, you can set that up on your VS Code actually. You can set that up on
Okay.
your VS Code.
When I was watching some videos before doing the project,
Yeah.
I think I saw a command where I've forgotten the syntax, but I believe they added reload to the line that will run that. So
Okay,
I
okay,
think maybe that one will make the thing reload.
that's perfect. Henshaw. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. So I was about coming to that. The thing is, I wanted to show you how to like first do it manually. Then when we are done, we will then introduce the reload button. So what happens here is that when you start the server, when you are starting your server, you can pass in an optional flag. What I mean is, when we type this command, this up, you can pass an optional flag, and it is called reload. What it is that it makes this server to restart automatically whenever there's a change in code. Right. So, for example, here's what I mean. In this case, I have not added a reload flag. So if I make a change here, nothing happens. There's no reload to the server. Right. Everything stays as is, as it was. So if you want this server to reload automatically whenever you make a change, you can add a reload flag to it. So whatever change we make here will make the server to reload. So let us say hello mic 4. You can see the server is reloaded, right? We now have a reload. So if we should send a request to this particular endpoint, we are going to see the updated data that we are expecting. Hello mic 4. So thank you, Henshaw, for that. I really appreciate it. Good. So with this, we are done with post request and with this, we are done with get request and post request. So I'm going to give an example for put request and delete request. Right. These are the four main digital pivots that we'll be working with. So as usual, you decorate the app and you write the name of the HTTP file you'll be working with. And in this case, we'll be working with put. So we put in the word put. And I want this same endpoint to accept the put request. Let's say mic update. Sync the mic then I'll return mic update. All right, so this is how you create an endpoint that will accept a put request. The function is basically the same thing. The only thing that changes is this app dot, right? Instead of app dot get for get request, app dot push for push request, we have app dot put for put requests. Then we have app dot delete for delete requests. Instead of puts, we can say delete. So I want this to accept my delete. All right, so this is how you create a delete endpoint. Right. So please, do you have any questions so far on this? Before we proceed, any questions so far?
No, I'm okay with everything.
Okay. So to interact with an endpoint with a post, okay, with a put or delete request, you simply need to change the request value here on your test lines. And if it is put, you change this to put. So in this case, we were sending a put request to my update. We were sending a put request to my update. So with this, it should work. Good. We then have the expected response object, my update. Then, if you want to send a delete request, you simply change the HTTP update to delete. And in this case, we were sending a delete request to my delete. So you can just change this to my delete and send the request. And we have the expected response. So let me pause here for questions.
No questions for my end. I understand what you have said so far.
Okay, and sure. Any question?
No questions. Understand.
All right, Mike.
Yes,
Oh, please mute yourself. Mute yourself. All right, please. You can drop your question on the chat if you have any. Let's check the charts if there's any question. Okay. Sorry for that. I was asking about command you're writing on your terminal. Okay, which command was I writing at that point? Yeah. Sorry, please, can you expand? Can you explain your question? I don't really understand it.
Sorry. Sorry. Hello.
Hello, yeah, I can hear you.
Hello. Can you hear? Can you hear me? Sorry. Hello.
Yes, you can hear you. We can hear you.
Okay, okay. Please, you can drop it on the chat, please. All right. So while we're waiting for him to give more explanation to give more context to his question, there is one more thing that makes Fast API special. Right? It really makes Fast API special, and it is called. I think it's best for me to show you that in practice. Can you see my screen, my browser?
No, I'm still seeing the VS Code.
Okay, let me switch to the browser. Okay, I now see.
Yes, I can see it now.
Okay, so there's something that makes fast API so special, and it is the API documentation. When you're working in a team, like, and we have front-end devs and the back-end devs, it's always important for you as the back-end dev working on the APIs to provide a documentation for the front-end devs to work with. Let's say we have an endpoint that is used for registration, right? So how would the front-end know that this endpoint exists? That's the first question. And how would they know the kind of data that is accepted to this endpoint? Then how do they know the kind of response, the kind of error code that is returned from this endpoint? All of these require an API documentation. So you can actually make you can actually create an API documentation using a tool called Swagger. Let's go to the website. Swagger. Good. Swagger API documentation and design for teams. So you can check it out. Swagger.io. It's a tool that you can use to document your API so that anyone that is consuming your APIs can find the whole process easier. All right. So if you are working with other tools like I think Django by default does not generate the APIs for you. You need to use other extra libraries to actually generate it. Right? But the beautiful thing about Fast API is that these documentations are generated for you on the fly. What I mean is, when you create this endpoint, instead of you coming here to the swagger.io to prepare the documentation for your endpoint, you can the documentation are already created for you. So to access the doc, you simply type /docs, then click enter, and you see the docs.
Hello, please. I'm still seeing your VS Code interface. I'm not seeing the browser. What you're doing.
Okay, I personally am seeing the browser.
Okay, let me just join again.
This is fine.
Okay.
Who else is seeing the VS Code?
For me, I'm seeing the browser. I'm still seeing the browser.
Okay, that's okay. So this is the documentation, all right? And this documentation lists everything. Don't forget we had an endpoint that handles GET requests, and it is like the root endpoint. It accepts only the GETs. It only accepts GET requests to that root endpoint. Then the path is what we have here, that single slash, right? Then we have another endpoint that is marked, and this endpoint takes a push request. Okay, and if you open it up, you will see the response. Okay, what kind of response do we get when we query this endpoint? And as you can see here, it is a 200 response for successful response is 200. Then the example value describes the kind of response you get back. Like, is it an object? Is it a string and all of that? And in this case, it's a string. Then that's basically that for the API documentation. We also had another endpoint that takes put requests to mic updates path. Then we have another endpoint that accepts a delete request to mic delete path. Then as we proceed in the class, when we start receiving data from, like when the endpoint starts receiving data, you find out that the representation of the data that it is receiving is also added here, so that anyone that's working with your API can, see what kind of data is accepting, see the kind of request it needs to send to that part, and see the response object that it will receive from that part. So please, any question on that before I proceed?
No question from my end.
Okay. So apart from this Swagger documentation, Fast API also comes by default with another kind of documentation, and it is called readout. It's called readout. It's also an API documentation. It's also an API a specification for like creating documentation for an API. And it's basically the same thing. It's basically the same thing. It explains each endpoint, the kind of request it gets, the get request, push request, request, then the path, the response object, the response object, etc., etc. So that is that. So does anyone have any questions so far in the class? Like I said earlier, the main aim of this class was to give a short introduction to Fast API and then help you to familiarize yourself with the basic concepts, like importing the Fast API class, instantiating the class, and creating path parameters. And I also showed you how to specify the HTTP hubs that will be used for certain endpoints that you're working with. Do you have any questions so far?
No question from me.
Okay. All right. So with this, we have come to the end of the class. I am going to clean this code up a little bit. Then when I'm done, I'll commit it to our project repository. So whenever you're free, you can go to the project repository and then clone the project and work with it on your local machine. So like I had explained at the start of the class, the first thing you need to do is fetch the latest changes with git fetch origin master. That's the first thing. You need to fetch the latest changes that have been committed. Then when you are done, you need to go into the class file folder and create an env file. Then when you are done, you then run the project. So I will update this readme.md so that you will get instructions on how to run the project in class 3. So that's all for today. That is all for today. Tomorrow we are going to look at, in tomorrow's class, we are going to, we are going to look at request body in tomorrow's class. That is how to actually get data. How to actually post data to the API endpoint. So that's what we are going to work. That's what we are going to work with extensively in tomorrow's class, and we are going to look more closely at path parameters. Right? I've been speaking about path. Like we are going to go deeper to really understand what it really is. And so with that, we will come to the end of the class for today. Thanks so much for attending. I really appreciate it.
Okay, sir. The virtual environment, do you need to deactivate it before closing your VS Code, or?
No, you don't need to. You don't need to. When you close the VS Code, to be deactivated. But if you wish to deactivate it, you can still do that by running the deactivate command. Yeah, the environment is not deactivated.
Okay.
But there's no need. Whenever you close your VS Code.
All right, thank you very
Sorry,
much.
sir. Before you go, the fetch command, the git fetch command you typed, will it work for a cloned repo?
Yeah, sure. It will work. That's how you get the latest changes that have been pushed to the repo. So
Okay.
with that, you simply
Alright, thank
run git fetch. But if it is a forked repo, you can fork any public repo to your account. The git fetch, you will not do that unless you manually, how do I even explain it? You need to manually fetch that on your GitHub.
Okay,
All
okay,
right.
like
Then when you're done,
that's what we do upstream, right?
yes, you fetch from upstream, and then you can fetch from your code. But there are ways you can do it with your command line, but you need to add the upstream branch to your command line. That's to your local Git, so that you can pull from the upstream branch, then merge to your master branch. So, but that's so advanced at this point. So if you fork the repo, just click fetch from upstream, then fetch from there.
All right, sir. I actually cloned, so I wanted to be sure if I could do the fetch on
Okay.
the clone.
Yeah, for cloning, you will not have any issue. Just type the fetch command. It will fetch the latest changes for you. Okay. All right. Any question, at least? No? Okay, thanks a lot for attending today's class. I really appreciate it. So that'll be that for today. You can now go. Thank you.